is what happens when night falls. How does a man with multiple wives divide up his time between them?
We're just starting a new thing. We're trying out 2 nights for each wife, and then we just kind of go through a rotation. But if anybody has any special needs or they need to talk or whatever, everybody's really flexible. And we adapt as we need to. But previous to that, we used to alternate every night. All the wives have their own rooms, and I just go from room to room, and I have my little office over here that I keep my clothing in and, you know, my personal items, and I just, so we can spend some time in each one of their rooms in their area and talk about the things they want to talk about and, you know, kind of nurture that relationship. Our most kind Heavenly Father, we are indeed grateful for all the blessings that we have received. And we are grateful for this food as we're preparing.
John Harper's first wife, Laurie, is a midwife.
She delivered both Janelle's children. And if your husband's having a child with another woman and you want to get over your jealousy and make sure that you're okay with stuff, try delivering that baby.
I had one woman come up to me and ask me, and she said, "How can you do that? How can you deliver Janelle's baby? That's John and Janelle's baby." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I think it's great. Yeah, I know." And, you know, she even had it in my bedroom. It was a beautiful experience.
I have lived around plural marriage before I met these guys for several years. And it was probably the easiest on me because I had seen it. I kind of knew what was going on. It was difficult to watch Laurie go through some emotions and know that she was giving up her man and he was going to be shared with me. But getting to know the family and being comfortable in the house was probably the hardest thing. It took a little while, but we did it.
As far as being jealous, I just try to remind myself that I really have no right to be. It's these women who share what they have with me. I don't feel I really have a right to be jealous. It happens. I mean, sometimes I've gotten jealous of Laurie's length of time with John because it seems like they have a really strong developed relationship, or I might be jealous of things Janelle does because, you know, she's younger and she's pretty and I've had to deal with that. And but I just tell myself that I really don't have a right to be jealous.
But sex and jealousy is, inevitably, the cause of considerable tension in polygamous marriages.
One of my relatives told about when she got married, the first wife went on their honeymoon with them and they had 2 beds in the motel room, and she and her husband had sex in front of the other wife so she wouldn't feel, supposedly it was supposed to help her not feel jealous, so that she would know that it's just like what goes on with her and him. And women's feelings and emotions have been abandoned horrendously.
There are a lot of women in the world that think that we are subjugated because we believe that we should be obedient to our husband. But it takes a much more intelligent and strong-willed woman to be obedient than not. It takes a man that has to be self-disciplined in order to be the kind of man that a woman can be obedient to.
It's hard to be patient all the time. I have to be a strict arbiter of justice in my home. I can't allow one wife to get me to oppress or to deny or to do something with another wife through me. I can't allow them to manipulate me in that way, or they can't trust me.
The only time that it's very hard is if you become consumed with what Randy is doing with that other wife. If it gets really hard, I have a punching bag in the basement. And I can go down and punch on it for a while until I get all of my emotion out. And that's very basic, but sometimes it takes that.
And just the other day, someone said that to me, well, I could never share my husband. I would be too jealous. And I didn't say it to her. It wasn't appropriate at the time, but I thought of this. What if you had a sister that you loved and she didn't have a husband? Wouldn't you want her to have a husband too? Would you want her to have anything less than an honorable marriage and have the opportunity to have children and raise a family and honorably?
Okay, leave that alone. Mark set. Go.
Gas tank. Tire.
From a child's point of view, one might imagine that growing up in polygamy is a kind of paradise. Close families, strong community roots, lots of other children to play with, one mother or another always around.
Okay, the clue is...
Before I moved here, my mom and dad were divorced, and my mom was never there. She was always at work, and I was always alone with my sister, and there was really no one there for me.
I am going to live for a marriage when I grow up, and I do hope my children will after me, and it is necessary to live plural marriage so we can be in the presence of God. I'm okay with it.
I hope that my children will live it too. I think it is necessary for us to be in the presence of God. It's one of the main, well, it's only a tiny segment of what we need to do to be able to come into the presence of God.
But polygamy is not all happy families. It is notable how many women talk about serious sexual abuse, how fathers ritually initiate their daughters, how abuse is considered to be an integral part of life in polygamy. Laura Chapman and her sister Rena Mackert both have terrible childhood memories. Rena was one of 31 children, 17 of them daughters, born to her father's 4 wives. They knew that polygamy was against the law and were always frightened that they would somehow let out the secret of their existence and that their father would be sent to jail. They kept that secret, and, for years, a much worse one.
Every girl, when she turned 16, he would take her out to dinner and a movie. And when I turned 16, we went to the dinner and movie, and on the way home, he started talking to me about his sex course that he offered to his girls. And that this was to teach me how to please my husband. And he said that he would be the one doing the instruction, and that this would put me on the same level with my mothers. It would be as though I was a sister wife to them. And that I was not to discuss this with any of the mothers because sister wives don't talk about sex among each other. And I was terrified.
Rena's sister, Laura Chapman, now divorced with 5 children, says some of her brothers began molesting her when she was 12. She complained to her mother, but was told it was just something boys do. She did not dare tell her mother that her father had been seriously abusing her for years.
I remember having him shove his penis in my mouth when I was as young as 3. Remember the weight of his body on my small chest or shoulders that young. I remember he had a jar of Vaseline by me. I yelled out because what he was doing hurt, and he backhanded me.
He lifted my nightgown and began to fondle my breasts and nipples. I begged him to stop, and he wouldn't. Before I knew it, and I really don't remember the exact sequence of how it happened, but I was on my mother's bed, and he had his fingers inserted into my vagina. And I sat there shaking and crying. just terrified. At this point, he saw some headlights.